It's 3:15 a.m. on a cold March night in Queens, New York, 1964. A young woman walks alone, her footsteps echoing on the pavement. Then a scream pierces the darkness. Windows light up in the apartment buildings nearby, but what happens next, or doesn't, will haunt this city for decades. This is The Good Samaritan, a podcast about true crime and the unsung heroes who step up when others turn away. I'm Allie Jones, and today we begin with a case that changed how we think about compassion in crisis. The murder of Kitty Genovese. But this isn't the story you think you know. Tonight, we'll uncover the truth, honor a victim, and celebrate a woman whose courage was almost forgotten. Catherine "Kitty" Genovese was 28, vibrant and full of dreams. Born to an Italian-American family in Brooklyn, she was the eldest of 5, with a laugh that filled rooms. By 1964, she was living in Kew Gardens, a quiet Queens neighborhood, managing a bar called Ev's 11th Hour. She shared a small apartment with her partner, Mary Ann Zelanko, and loved dancing, music, and her red Fiat. Kitty was the kind of person who made everyone feel seen. On March 13th, 1964, Kitty finished her shift around 2:30 a.m. She drove home, unaware she was being followed. Winston Mosley, a 29-year-old machine operator, had been prowling the streets. Mosley was a predator, a serial killer who targeted women, driven by necrophilic impulses. That night, he spotted Kitty's car and trailed her to Kew Gardens. Kitty parked near the Long Island Railroad station, a short walk from her apartment at 8270 Austin Street. It was 3:15 a.m. She stepped out, locked her car, and started toward home. Mosley parked nearby, grabbed a hunting knife, and followed. The attack happened in 3 brutal stages. Let's walk through it, moment by moment, using court records and Mosley's own confessions. At 3:15 a.m., Kitty crossed the street toward her apartment building. Mosley ran up behind her, near a street lamp by the Tudor-style building. He stabbed her twice in the back. Kitty's screams woke the neighborhood. Across the street, Robert Moser, a 70-year-old resident, leaned out his window and shouted, "Leave that girl alone!" Startled, Mosley fled to his car and drove off. Kitty, bleeding heavily, staggered toward her building's vestibule, out of sight from the street. But Mosley wasn't done. He circled back, hunting for her. Around 3:25 a.m., he found Kitty in the alley behind the building, collapsed near a staircase. She was too weak to scream. He stabbed her again and sexually assaulted her. By 3:35 a.m., Mosley moved to the vestibule at the back of the building, where Kitty had crawled, seeking safety. There, he stabbed her repeatedly, delivering fatal wounds. She lay in a pool of blood, her body wedged against the door. The attack lasted about 30 minutes, but it wasn't continuous. Its staggered nature, spread across multiple locations, confused witnesses. Some heard screams, but saw nothing. Others assumed it was a drunken fight. This fragmentation fueled the myth that 38 people watched and did nothing, a story we'll unpack next. 2 weeks later, the New York Times published a bombshell article. 37 who saw murder didn't call the police. It claimed 38 witnesses saw or heard Kitty's attack and turned away, painting a picture of cold, urban apathy. That story gripped the nation, birthing the bystander effect in psychology, when people fail to act because they assume someone else will. But the truth is messier. Later investigations, like Kevin Cook's book and the Times' own 2004 correction, showed the 38 witnesses number was inflated. Fewer than a dozen people clearly witnessed the attack. Some called police, though response was low. Others, like Robert Moser, intervened by shouting. Many were confused by the darkness, urban noise, or the attack's disjointed timeline. Dr. Jane Miller, psychologist. The bystander effect is real, but Kitty's case was more complex. People heard snippets of chaos, not a clear crime. Diffusion of responsibility kicks in. Everyone thinks someone else will act. Add 1960s New York with no 911 system, and hesitation makes sense, even if it's tragic. The Times story ignored these nuances, and it buried an even bigger truth. One woman didn't hesitate. Her name was Sophia Farrar, and her story changes everything. Sophia Farrar was 36, a petite mother living across the hall from Kitty. She and her husband Joseph were close with Kitty. Sophia sometimes watched Kitty's poodle, and Kitty drove Sophia's son to school. That night, the Farrars heard a scream around 3 a.m., described by their son Michael as blood-curdling. They looked out but saw nothing and went back to sleep. Around 3:40 a.m., a neighbor, possibly Carl Ross, called Sophia, saying Kitty was hurt in the vestibule. Sophia didn't wait. She threw on clothes and ran through an alley to the back of the building. The vestibule door was jammed. Kitty's body was against it. Sophia forced it open, heart pounding, unaware if the killer was still there. She found Kitty, covered in blood, barely alive. Sophia knelt beside her, cradling her friend. Sophia shouted for a neighbor to call the police and stayed with Kitty, comforting her until help arrived around 4:15 a.m. Kitty died in the ambulance, but she wasn't alone. That's Sophia Farrar, a true Good Samaritan, whose courage was erased by the Times' narrative of apathy. Kitty Genovese's murder sparked the 911 system, bystander effect studies, and soul-searching about community. But it's Sophia Farrar's compassion that defines this story for us. She reminds us that even in darkness, one person can make a difference. This is why we created the Good Samaritan. We're here to honor victims like Kitty and heroes like Sophia. Join us next time as we uncover more tales of courage in the face of crime. I'm Allie Jones. Until next time, be the one who steps up.